programs that at this time, 2:30 or thereabouts, as they used to say in the scriptures, at about that time, Michael Willesee was going to talk to you. I told you that he cannot come, but his friend has come, which is terribly biblical. And his friend is Ron Tesoriero. Have I got it right, Ron? Thanks be to God. I was looking at the name now. This is Ron's. Remember I told you that this was going to become available? Well, he came over. He just flew over kind of at the last moment to fill in for his friend Michael. And he has brought some of these with him, as much as he could fit into the luggage without paying exorbitant fees. And they'll be available. Oh, incidentally, I'm not stealing this. No, it will be on sale out the back, and you'll be able to buy that. I think it's about $25, and this is called Reason to Believe, but you'll hear more of that from our guest, whom I am absolutely delighted to welcome, and you are such a kind man to fill in for your friend and colleague. Ron lives in Sydney, incidentally. He's a lawyer, he's a documentary maker, and he's an author, and he's produced documentaries, Miracles and Visions, Fact or Fiction, Signs from God, Science that Tests Faith. Ron's worked, of course, with an eminent broadcaster from the ABC, Michael Willesee, about whom some of you might know. Certainly people like myself know all about him. He's been around for an awfully long time, and it was Ron who encouraged Michael Willesee to go to Bolivia to interview a woman who has the stigmata. And I'm quite sure, and the notes will tell me, that if it hadn't been for Ron's insistence, that interview would not have come about, which eventually attracted about 50 million viewers in the United States of America, and it continues to be played for discerning audiences. I am so grateful that you've joined your Catholic people on the side of the ditch. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Phil. I'm sure that many of you would have preferred that Annie continued singing rather than have me here, and I certainly would, but I was lucky she did stop because I ran out of tissues. It was such a moving testimony, and the music was so great, I had to recompose myself to come up here and speak. But I congratulate the organisation here for doing such a great job and to encouraging this convention on the Eucharist. And I'm delighted to be here and to be able to share with you some really great stories that have come about through the work that Mike Willesee and I have been doing in the area of science and faith. And I'm going to give you a bit of insight into the making of the program, Signs from God, and the filming of the stigmata, and then proceed on to two very interesting new cases that I don't think any of you know about, which involves two Eucharistic miracles that we've been working on, and the stories there will have ramifications for the Church and I believe for science, and I'll come to that. But let me just say at the outset how nice it is to see such a group of fellow Christians spending time at an event like this and taking time off from doing things that the rest of the world out there are doing, like enjoying your lovely beaches, following that other religion that you all have over here called rugby, isn't it? Or even watching a replay of last night's wedding. But I'm sure that the reason why you do that is because you believe in God, He is part of your life, and that's not the case with everyone. I mean, when you think about it, how many millions and millions of people who live in this world who really have no consciousness of God, or somehow or other God's been pushed right away out of their mind. But yet every one of those people, I'm sure at some point in their lives, do stop and think about those big questions. How did life begin? Is there any purpose to our life? And what happens to us after our death? And traditionally we have looked to religion to try and gain answers to those big questions. But today science, it seems, has stepped in and has offered its explanation for these big questions. And of course we know how much science has advanced in the last 100 years. We know now that science has progressed in many fields. At one extreme, with the invention of the telescope, they can look into the heavens and explore the universe in ways that could never have been imagined before. At the other extreme, they can look into a microscope, into the tiniest particle, into a cell, and they find that in that cell is a world of its own, an incredibly complex, organised piece of information that is greater than the greatest computer that's ever been conceived. And it's in digital technology. It's just an amazing world inside that cell. And so science, it seems, has gained this confidence to be able to assert their ability to answer the big questions, so much so that now we listen to them when they tell us that there are other explanations to our existence other than for God. And you can imagine how difficult it is for a school student today who attends a school like this, or any school anywhere on earth, who goes into the science class and is now told that we are the product of a big bang, that there was an explosion in the universe billions of years ago which led to the conditions favourable for a molecule to form and to replicate and become more complex, eventually form a cell, and that then evolved into more complex forms, and ultimately we arrive after having transferred through the species of an ape. And yet that's what they encourage you to think. And in fact, there are people who walk around now saying that God is a delusion, that we can see in nature such ability to be able to self-create, that anyone who doesn't believe in this scientific process of evolution or natural selection is in the Dark Ages. And that child now comes out of his science class, walks into a religion class, and he's told that God created the world, that he created you in his image, that you are the pick of his creation, that your life has purpose, that there is life after death, and that if you have done all those things that you are supposed to do, that you're entitled to a paradise in heaven afterwards. And for the Catholic school student, he's got a bigger dilemma, because he's then confronted with the teaching of the Catholic Church, which says that God who created the world, that God who created you, is in fact inside a piece of bread. As the Americans call it, where's Annie? They call it a cookie or something, don't they? You're not exactly going to be first invitee to the intellectuals' party with beliefs that you believe God's in a cookie. And of course that's the essential element, the fundamental belief of the Catholic faith. And it's a very difficult concept. And it's a concept that I think that is becoming harder and harder for Catholics to comprehend. But in the stories I'm going to tell you tonight, you are going to have some relief from that dilemma, that problem, and they are great stories. But let me just tell you that 20 years ago I could never have imagined I'd be travelling all the way over here and speaking to you about God. I would be happy to talk to you about the planning system in New South Wales, the powers of government to confiscate property without compensation, all those sort of great questions, and I was good at it. Earned a lot of money telling people what I thought about those things. But it all changed one day when, in 1987, sitting in my office, and a priest comes in and says to me, look, will you help me? He says, the bishop has just appointed me to this area. I need to get a church and school going. He says, but I haven't got any money. My parish hasn't got any money. We've got no land. I'm thinking, what else? I was expecting he wants a donation. And so, no. He says, no, I don't want any money from you. He says, I've got it all worked out. He says, I saw this piece of land and I've been there each morning and I've been kneeling down praying to God that one day we might get it. He says, then I went and got a relic of Mary MacKillop. And of course I think you New Zealanders all believe in Mary MacKillop, don't you? I think she's a saint for you as well, isn't she? Well, anyhow, this is the days before she was a saint. So he got a relic of Mary MacKillop, nailed it up on the tree, and he says, that's where it's going to be. I looked at him and I said, Father, let me get this right. You've got no money, your parish has got no money, you've got no land, you don't know who owns the land you've been praying on, you don't know how big it is, and I said, things aren't going very well for you. And I said, maybe that's the way they did conveyancing back in the Middle Ages. I need to know all these things. And I can see he was getting a bit upset that I wasn't helping him very much, because I really didn't know how to help him, but anyhow. So I got out the zoning map and I looked at the map and he showed me where the land was, and I said, Father, it's the wrong zone anyhow, so forget about it. So I said, but let me think about it. There may be some other thoughts I can put to this problem and see if there's land elsewhere that could be zoned. So he wanders off. The next day I have a new client walk into my office. He says, look, will you help me? Will you act for me? I want to market a piece of land that I have. Yeah, I know, you're getting it. He says, I need to sell this land in a hurry because for tax purposes, if I can get it before the end of the financial year, I have great benefits. And lo and behold, you're not going to guess, it's exactly where the relic was. And so, and the story now, it's a long story, I'm not going to go through it now, but if you go there today, you'll see there's a great big school there, there's a new church. Every bit of what he prayed for happened without 1 cent. It's a long story. But afterwards I said to him, Father, I said, Father, when you knelt on the ground and you prayed and you have 3 university degrees, you kneel down like a peasant, you look up to the sky, talk to a God you can't see, you ask for the impossible and it happens. How do you explain that? And he said, well, he says, the God who made this world hasn't gone to sleep, He says, I